Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Service Without Excuses podcast. I'm glad you're with me on this afternoon. We want to thank, of course, our sponsor, Sotellus.com/Robmlyon, Roblyon. They are the Cadillac of review management software. They're awesome at collecting all the reviews from your current customers, your raving fans that you have, and making sure that their information is put out there in the right places online so people can find you, read about you, and learn to fall in love with you and the service you provide. So I highly recommend we use them in our own business, NewJersey'sBest.com, and go to Sotellus.com. It's SOTELLUS.com/Robmlyon, ROBLYON. They can set you up with a great demo. And again, we have no skin in the game other than the fact that we love them. They're friends of mine, and they do a great job, and they, of course, sponsor the show, so we appreciate it. I have an awesome guest on tonight. I've known Ivan for a very, very long time. Ivan has run multiple mid to almost large scale, I'll say, restoration companies in the Midwest part of the country. I've respected him. He's been a coach to me personally. He's been a coach to my staff and my business personally in the past, and he's just an amazing guy, and he has an amazing story. And we're going to sit here and talk about something that is coming up very, very importantly today, and it's coming up a lot. And it's about onboarding and employees. And of course, the common thing is, I can't find people. I can't find people. I can't find people. The government's paying them more than I can afford. They're making it impossible. Well, like anything, it's going to shut off at some point in time. So the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to get prepared for that. And Ivan's on here today to talk a little bit more about how to onboard, incentives, how to work with employees, how to train. He now works with different companies on how to really train people passionately about what drives them and the goals and determining factors that they have in their business and what they want to see. So Ivanturner, welcome, my friend. It's great to have you here on the Service Without Excuses podcast.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too, man. It's been a while, but I'm glad we've always been in touch. And Ivan lives out in Jefferson City, Missouri. He is a past veteran, and he also currently owns and has, I don't think he's actively doing much with it, but he has something called Disaster Brigade, which I think is just an awesome name. It's a veteran-based restoration company in the Midwestern part of the country in Jefferson City. So please feel free to enlighten our listeners to a little bit more about yourself, sir.
Okay, I missed audio there for just a second. Yeah, Rob, that's right. I've been in restoration, in the restoration space for 30 years. I know it's hard to believe by looking at me. You probably think I'm 25, but just turned 60. But I've been doing it my entire adult life, and yeah, I have had two businesses, restoration businesses, and I've done residential work primarily, but I've also done large loss work. I think it's 2015. I spent some time out in Boston, Massachusetts. You guys on the East Coast were hammered with, I think it was 7 foot of snow.
Oh yeah.
So we did a lot of ice dam work. So that was fun. But yeah, you were talking about getting employees, and this is probably the toughest time that I've been in business as far as getting employees. So I think it's important that we have this conversation about onboarding, because if you're lucky enough to get an employee, you definitely want to keep the employee. And the ideal way to keep a good employee, in my opinion, is through a well-planned onboarding process. And that's what I build. I just recently built one up in Wisconsin, and it was a $5 million company, very successful company. And the owners knew that for longevity, that they're going to have a well-trained staff in place. And that's something all business owners should do across all spaces, not just the restoration space. It might be the carpet cleaning space, landscaping, whatever it happens to be, because right now it's an employee's market. So we've got to look at different ways of recruiting employees and keeping them.
I think now definitely has presented some significant challenges, and again, none other than our own illustrious government that's made it more difficult than ever to find people, because Well, I mean, you take an average person, just say, do you want to sit home and get paid for something or not? But at the end of the day, you have to be motivated. I kind of treat that the same mentality of I've got a good, secure job. And I always go back to the words of Robert Kiyosaki. You know, the only good security or the only security that really should be necessary is maximum security to hold people in one particular place at one given time. But people that are motivated, if you have an employee for a company, if you are an aspiring manager for a company, an aspiring leader, maybe you want to run a company and then maybe go out on your own at some point in time, you should have the motivation and drive to say, you know what, I'm not worried about the government's going to give me. I'm going to get ahead of the rest. I'm not going to, stay in that corral for too long. I'm going to get out there, make my own mark, and get going. Because in a down market, which we're currently in, it is a down market. You can grow something better if you're an employee or you're running your own company. I would think right now would be one of the best times to jump on it because inevitably the country's going back to work. We're here in New Jersey. We're like the last bastion of taking the masks off, and as of tomorrow, they're gone. I predict in the next couple of weeks, the government will quite possibly cut it off and say, "Listen, get back to work."
Yeah, you know what? The thing is, it is tough for businesses to compete against the government. I've never been unemployed in my life, so I don't know what it's like. I don't know how to apply for unemployment. I don't know the ups and downs about it. But I've got to say, in all honesty, for folks that are lower wage earners, when I say lower wage earners, less than 15 an hour, I'm just using that as an example, and to get paid just as much or more by staying at home, who can blame them? Unless it was a good company. If it was a good company, they would prefer to go back to work for the good company, in my opinion. So I think this is a lesson. This whole COVID thing is going to be a lesson that most business owners will never forget, because I think the ones that really treated their employees like they were empowered, they felt like they were part of the company. I don't think their employees are the ones that are sitting at home on the government tip. I think those employees probably stayed with the job. So I think there's going to be a major lesson learned out of this whole thing, and that's how to treat employees better. And I don't mean just as far as pay and benefits, but to actually give them a pathway to success. Everybody is always talking about how their ads and everything when they're recruiting, it says, "Oh, join our company. We've got this culture and we've got these good values and we're the best at this and we take care of our employees." Well, sometimes you have to call bullshit bullshit. Not all companies live up to their brand promise, and employees aren't stupid. Employees can see that. They see, well, no, where were you when we needed you? It's like, it reminds me of that, I think, Verizon cell phone commercial. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now? I picture a lot of employees that are on the government tip not going back to work because they're paid more by staying off of work, are probably saying, can you hear me now? The employers ought to be listening. That's my take, Rob.
I was just thinking about
pretty direct, but that's right.
And you're dead on. And you're dead on. Something to be the big thing. And you talk about companies when somebody comes on and they're being told, the company culture is great. You're going to love it here. Everybody's awesome. And they find out that the manager's cutthroat and this person's, hooking up with this person and this person is covering up for this person, stealing something from inventory. And all this stuff is going on at this great culture company. And you'll find out that it's usually the problem at the very top. And as business owners, and I've had the luxury of 17 years being employed for other companies before ever opening my door. So I was an employee and I understand the dynamic on that end of it as well. But I said this before, and it's in my book. I said you can be consistently good, consistently poor, but never ever inconsistent. And I had a debate with the industry icon about this, and he said, "Well, you're trying to say you can do poor work or you could be whatever." I says, "No, I'm not saying that at all. If your employees see you doing something inconsistent with the message you're trying to give them, they're going to see through it. Only a moron would not see that, and most employees are not morons. So if they see the owner or manager saying do something or do as I say, don't do as I do, they're gonna call bullshit, like you just said about it. They're gonna say, "Listen, This isn't real. You're lying to me. You're telling me one thing, so this is your real culture." So now all of a sudden, they're either gonna conform into that bullshit culture, or they're gonna take a hike to somebody else that actually does give a damn. So they're going to see it. And and when you're managing, say a millennial, I say this a lot because they bag on millennials. Money is not always the determining factor, like you just stated, when it comes to having employees come and work for you. They like a company culture above money today. No matter what you hear, no matter what you read, they're all about the money. That's not true. They're about the culture because they want to make a difference. They want to be impactful. They want to know they're part of it. They don't want to know they're just a number. My generation was different. We wanted a job. We'd work hard, work up the corporate ladder, the business ladder, and hopefully get ahead. These people are so focused on getting to that top level. They want to know how they can get there, what's the quickest path to do it, and they want to be seen as a person that can be worked with so they can move up the chain. That's what I've seen.
Well, I'll tell you, Rob, what you're saying is exactly right. I've been doing consulting work for probably about 10, 12 years now, on and off. I'm pretty careful about who I would work with. But one of the very first things I do when I go in as a consultant for a company, most of the companies are smaller companies, anywhere from 500,000 to 3 million would be a typical customer of mine. And first thing I do, and I get their permission up front, I say, I'm not interested in doing anything for you unless I have the authority to do what I do. And I need to talk to every one of your employees, from your managers down to the newest restoration tech. And I always ask them a series of questions, the common questions like, do you enjoy working here? What do you like about it? What do you like least about it? What did you plan on doing when you were a kid? Because I know you didn't grow up to want to be a carpet cleaner or a restoration guy. Nobody does. At least I don't think so. But anyway, so I ask those questions. I ask about where do you see yourself in 3 years from now? I don't know. And then I asked the magical question is, have you been given a pathway to success? If you could make your career here, would you make it? Yeah, I would. But the one question I ask, which I always find in common from company to company, is when I ask the employees about how do you feel you're treated pay-wise? Do you feel you're being paid fairly for the amount of work you're doing? And the answer is almost always yes. It's rarely that people say, oh, no, I think I'm being cheated. That's not the problem. People don't leave companies because of pay. They leave because of managers and management. And everybody has had experience with managers. I've run into a couple of them through the years. I was probably one back in my early business career. Some managers are so narrow-minded, they can see through a keyhole with both eyes at the same time.
Right.
And that's when you're narrow-minded, and that doesn't do well with employees growing with the company. Again, I think one of the problems is people just don't give employees enough credit. They think that all employees, just because they're hired and they'll work for $14 or $12 an hour, whatever you're paying them, that all of a sudden you're smarter than them. But it's the opposite. A lot of times managers and owners of businesses, while they think they're smarter than the employee is actually smarter than the manager. They dumb themselves down. They dumb themselves down because they're what's that?
I said, I'm sorry, but how important do you feel proper leadership is with these things? How important do you think leadership is? Because people have different qualifications of leadership, but I haven't seen a ton of it where I went, wow, they really lead with action. I've seen a lot of people, read a book and go, I'm a leader. And
yeah,
there may be some great principles in that book. I mean, Maxwell books are incredible leadership training. But you can't read a book to become a leader. You have to learn to be a leader, in my opinion.
You're right, Robin. And I think most businesses that fail because of lack of leadership. And contrary to the popular belief where people say, oh, he's a natural born leader. Bullshit. There's no such thing as a natural born leader. There may be someone who has a natural ability to use persuasion, but that doesn't make him or her a leader. It might be someone that has the ability to show empathy or build instant rapport, but that doesn't make him or her a leader. So that's probably one of the biggest problems in all businesses is lack of leadership. And you can't give somebody a hat that says leader on it, and all of a sudden they're a leader of a company unless they can have the experience they have to understand how to lead people. And human beings are complicated, yet they're simple. But the one thing I've learned about leading employees is you got to understand each employee. You can't just treat all employees, throw all employees into this one pod and say, okay, we're going to treat you all exactly the same, but you don't think the same. And that's what causes conflict with most businesses, again, in my opinion. That's just the way I see it.
No, absolutely. You know, when a training, I'm working with somebody now to develop a training program. And saying to this person, you have to make it simple. And that person says, I can't make it simple. It's not a simple thing. I says, it is a simple thing. Unless you're curing cancer, it's a simple thing. Unless you're a rocket scientist, it's a simple thing. Unless you were the guys that came up with the COVID vaccine, it's a pretty simple thing. I'd imagine their stuff is pretty complex comparison to the rest of our stuff. So yes, there might be some precedents for it. But if your stuff is simple, you have the person that's the high achiever, that is maybe highly intelligent, that understands it very quickly and easily. They're the person that went to college and probably breezed right through it, didn't even study, just took a test, and they were done. And these other people that worked their ass off, I was part of that. And you had to study hard because your concentration was in 5 different places, because you might have ADD or might have something that's pushing you in a different direction. And you might be smart, but you don't have the same skills that the other person have, or the same abilities the other person have. And my point to this was, when you're putting a training program together, put it for Jim, the genius, and Bob, that is not the genius, but is a good guy, that's reliable, that's dependable, that has your back, but doesn't have all of those things quickly, can't absorb all those things quickly, rather, in a program, because you're doing it for Jim and Bob. These are the two guys you're training for, and they're not the same person. So make sure whatever you put in a training program works for both, because if you train all Jims, Bobs are going to get thrown to the wayside, and your program is going to suck. There's no other way around that.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other thing that I think that people need to realize when they're building a training program or doing onboarding is to also understand that everybody learns differently. Some people learn well through lecture style. I always preferred lecture style. That's just the way I rode. A lot of people prefer to learn on the job, get their hands on, do it that way, and that's all right too. Some people do well with video training. That doesn't do well with me, but so everybody has a different style of learning that they can actually excel at. But again, just, back when I first started, the way I trained technicians when they were brand new, I would just go out with them, they would shadow me and do the work with me. I'd have them show them, but I made a point to always tell them exactly the why behind everything. That's another problem, is in training, you can train somebody how to, for example, dry a basement, but you really need to teach them the why we do things the way we do things, not just do it and be conditioned to doing it. You have to tell them the why behind it.
Right. There's a famous book by Simon Sinek, that explains the why people do things, and it's one of the best leadership books I've ever. In fact, our common friend Bill Yaden, I believe, is the one that turned me on to it. He's an avid reader. He puts me to shame now. I was a much more avid reader and just don't have the attention time to do it. But I think it's called Now Ask Why, or something along those lines. Simon Sinek. And Simon explains in that book, that is literally a playbook on how to manage employees today, by the way. So if anybody's listening to this, you want a playbook on how a different generation thinks about it. And by the way, here's the thing, and I talked about this, or I think I wrote it in a post on here. In my generation, my parents' generation called our generation worthless and just lazy. Okay, their generation called your generation worthless and lazy. Okay, so it's an ongoing thing over time to say, oh, they don't want to work, they don't want to do this. You have to find a way to develop them. That's what managers do. That's what leaders do. They find a way to develop the people they're with. That's what makes them good at being leaders and managers, is development. If you can't develop somebody, that means your communication skills probably aren't that good, and maybe you need to look in the mirror and come back around and figure it out. But there is a why behind everybody and why they do something. Why are you on here today on this podcast? Why are we discussing leadership and onboarding and stuff? Because it's a cause that needs to be talked about. It's an important, you're a leader in this. You've experienced it. You've not just read the book, as you said it, you've experienced it over 30 years running companies. You can't learn that by reading a book. You can learn a quick lesson in it, but you're going to forget it because you're never going to have something that's going to bring you back in time to an example where you can go, oh, I dealt with somebody like Billy before. I remember when Sam was here, and yeah, you had the same issues. Wonder if I can try that with him. You're not going to get that from a book. You're going to get that from experience. And I think a true leader, a true entrepreneur, a true manager pulls on experience to be an effective leader.
Yeah, and you know what, Rob, I've got to confirm what you said about Simon Sinek. I've read everything he's written. I watch every one of his TED Talks. The guy's brilliant as far as leadership goes. But speaking of leadership, another thing that all leaders have to learn, and they have to embrace it, even though it seems counterintuitive at first, you have to let your employees make mistakes. It's right for the owners and managers to make mistakes, but now why all of a sudden employees cannot make mistakes? And that's one of the reasons why I can walk into any restoration company. I've been in so many through my career, and I can tell you within 2 hours if it's got poor management or good management. And the reason why I can tell you that is because I can talk to the employees, and if the employees are shoulders drooped, head down, that means they've been kind of set off to the side like they're part of the sick, lame, and lazy club, and they haven't been given a chance to make a mistake, and they haven't been empowered. And if you want to keep employees long term, you've got to empower them. Don't be afraid to let an employee grow his intelligence while he's working for you. He's not a competitive threat. He's only a competitive threat when you dumb him down. So yeah, again, humans we're complex. There's some guys and gals that are in the workforce, especially the restoration workforce, that aren't career minded, but maybe it's because they haven't been given an opportunity to see what a career can look like. Because they're not allowed to participate in things that happen in the company. But I know very few companies are going to operate like Zappos. And you're familiar with Zappos, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. I read the book not too long ago, written by Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos. But the one thing that he knew how to do was to empower his employees. It felt like a family working there. So, and his turnover wasn't anything compared to what other companies of equal size are.
One of the things you're bringing up, and it's brilliant, and maybe you don't even realize. So I talked to my wife about this the other day. I said, Zappos was acquired for about $1 billion. Zappos did about $1 billion. And I was talking about somebody that actually called me wanting to sell their company, their thing to me. And I had to, unfortunately, tear it down and say, what are you really selling at the end of the day? And I told my wife about the Zappos story. I says, you know why Amazon acquired Zappos? What's the most expensive thing to do when a company hires an employee? It's to retrain another one. It costs a lot to retrain another employee. Zappos kept their employees, the majority of them. In fact, they made it so, and you know this, they put such an offer out there to take a hike to get people to leave. They didn't do it. Why Amazon decided to acquire Zappos for $1 billion, which means they gave you $1 even with your gross profits, by the way, not your net profit, your gross profit, because the company culture was there and the customer service experience was there. And they knew it was going to be very expensive to retrain their employees. It was going to be the most expensive part of their business because you have a lot of equity in your employees. And to boot, the reputation of the company. That made that company extremely valuable to Amazon to acquire them. And that's why they did dollar per dollar, which was unheard of in cash.
Yeah, and I think it was 1.2 billion. Not that a couple hundred thousand makes a difference.
Yeah.
But what I found it fascinating because once again, going back to the very beginning when we first started talking, we talked about culture, core values and culture. That right there epitomizes what culture should look like in a business. And in fact, one of the things I was most impressed about was how his company had, I forget what they called it, a community page or something, where all the employees could get on a site and tell about why they liked working at Zappos. They weren't compensated for this. That's just something they wanted to do. And then if anybody else, if they ever had an opening, which nobody wants to give up their job, but they'd get on there and look and see what all these hundreds of other Zappos employees are saying positively about the company. But most other companies can't do that. In fact, I'm not gonna lie to you, first 20 years of my career, I'd been afraid to ask my employees because I wasn't the best leader most of the time. But we can learn from these things. We can learn from these mistakes and learn from companies like Zappos and Simon Sinek and others. So yeah, it's a great topic. It's one that I've been talking about for years. I love the topic of leadership, and it's just the funny thing is though is it's just so sad because it's not a complicated thing.
Nope.
It's not a complicated thing to instill leadership in a company. It's really nice. It's a commitment. It's a long-term commitment. That's what it is. And you have to have the right people in the right positions, just like Jim Collins, from good to great, right people in the right seats on the bus. And you just can't automatically think that someone's a leader because you gave him or her that position.
Right.
I learned leadership. I was a terrible leader my first 15, 20 years, I'd say 15 years. Kind of a little bit of a mix of micromanager. And then sometimes I would manage with a wet noodle approach until I finally figured out that, these employees cost me money, but my employees were the ones that were paying for my vacations, my 2 homes, my sports car, my cruiser, my large bank account at the time before the divorce, all my homes. So I finally one day just realized something's wrong here. So I'm going to change things up a little bit, let the employees do what I hired them to do and stay the hell out of their business.
And that's the truth. Let them, again, we've all made mistakes. The greatest teacher is hard knocks. It's not college. I use nothing from college. It's not what your friends say. It's you screwing up. Pardon my French, you fucking up something. I mean, and that's sometimes, I forget who said it, you got to make a mess to make a process, or make a mess in the first place to figure it out. You got to really destroy things down to the core and then figure out, okay, what do we do? Lessons are learned from mistakes. Lessons are not learned from lessons. They're learned from something that gave you a pit in your stomach, like the call I just talked about a couple days ago. And when I'm dealing with my crews, do I berate them? Do I say, how dare you, look what could have caused it? You got to come back and say, okay, guys, next time maybe we got to be a little more careful. I would have never thought it was it personally. For all the years I've been doing this, I would have never thought that could have ever been an issue. How can you possibly put that on an employee when you would have screwed up just as bad? Take accountability, all right? You're the one looking yourself in the mirror every day. And if you're not taking accountability of your own actions and your own mistakes and your own miscomings, how can you expect employees to ever buy in or believe you when you're not believable when it comes to
that's
the leadership?
Yeah, and you got to have 110% buy-in from employees, and that's the other problem. I think a lot of employers and managers just don't understand what buy-in means. They think, well, they talk big and they do the schmooze and they offer little perks to get people in the door. And they talk big for the first, usually it's about the first hour and a half. They put them out in a truck, send them out in the field, and pair them with someone who probably is not the right person to pair them with anyway, because that person probably isn't a leader. And then they throw the guy to the wolves. That's a horrible way to start a career.
I'll go right into that. You show me a company that hires people like that, I'll show you a terrible reputation and a terrible rate of attrition, which means these people are going out the door faster than they're coming in. I know a very successful company in New Jersey, and they're a restorer that just does tons of money, has all of the bells and whistles, all the toys, all the infrastructure in place, has a terrible, hostile company culture, and can't retain shit, can't retain anybody. Yet they go around talking about how great they are and how they're great leaders and they can make a difference and look how successful they are. Yet they can't keep the smallest employee happy there because it's a volatile culture. and you're saying everybody else is a screw up but not you. Great, I'm glad for your success. If your definition of success is micromanaging a bunch of people driven in fear and aggravation, you're going to call that success. I call you an asshole. I have no other way to say that. If you can't lead by example, don't lead. Go get a job. You're no good to anybody. You're not leading. You're not holding people's feet to the fire. Listen, I didn't wake up one day and say I wanted to fire somebody. I'm sure you never woke up one day and said, today is the day I got to fire Jimmy. Jimmy, I like Jimmy, but Jimmy is just screws this up left and right. And I have talked to Jimmy, and I've had to write Jimmy up, and we've gone through this whole process, and we're back here again, and now I have to do it. There is a pit in your stomach. I don't care how long you've been doing it or how many people you've had to let go. You got a pit in your stomach because you got to sit there with Jimmy and say, Jimmy, I'm very sorry, and I got a family and kids, but it ain't working out, my friend. And you got to go do something. It's just not here. And I wish you the best. Nobody likes doing that. You got to be a complete psychopath to be happy. And I have met them, by the way. You got to be a complete psychopath to enjoy letting somebody go. All right.
Yeah.
How about learn how to retain them? How about, we know it's the most expensive thing in a business is to retrain employees now more than ever, because they can go down the road to your competitor very quickly because they're all hiring. Like you said, it's an employee market. It's not an employer market. It's an employee market. They can literally work at your place or go down the street and work for me or you. And they have that option on the table. So you better bring your game. And here's another thing. Marketing changes. Okay. From the time we started in business, marketing was yellow pages and flyers, and marketing is all online. It's totally different. None of that stuff even exists anymore. Okay. There's no landlines. I'm not calling Marge and saying, hey, Marge, you need your rugs cleaned. You know, I'm sending SMS texts. It changes. Guess what, guys? Change with time. It's not the day where you can berate your people and expect them to keep taking the kicking. There's an old saying, keep kicking the dog will kick back, or dog will bite back. You can't expect them to be any different. Think about how you'd want to be treated, I guess. And again, I know we're going off on a tangent here, but you are so right when it comes to this. People, they lack that leadership to say, you know what? It's me. It's me. It's not Jimmy. It's not Bob. It's not Donna. It's not Bruce. It's me. They're fine, but I've managed them poorly. I've directed them poorly. I've shown poor leadership. How can I expect these people to succeed, not just here, but anywhere, when I'm the problem?
Yeah. Well, Rob, I'll tell you, as a consultant, and I know you know this, but the one fear that clients have when they call on a consultant is they have a fear that they're going to be found out, that the consultant's going to get a clear understanding. And actually, it only usually takes just a few hours to sit with the CEO of a business and his top management team and understand right out of the gate, okay, I see what the problem is here now. I see what the bottleneck is, or I see what the employee attrition turnover rate is. I see what the problem is. But most employers that fear a consultant do so because they're afraid the consultant's going to tell them the truth, because they know the truth. I'll give you an example. I had a client a few years ago in the Southwest, and this particular gentleman went through about 8 operations managers in a year. 8. It's impossible.
Never even heard that. Oh my God.
I don't know how it's possible, but no, I saw the books he showed to me, and I'd asked him, I said, well, are you proud about that? Are you happy? He says, no, but he said, I don't take shit from people. I said, well, but you can't keep an operations manager. Something's wrong. So he asked me on my last day there, he said, Ivan, I want you to talk to all my staff and my managers. I want you to tell them exactly what you told me. But see, because what I told him, Rob, is I told him, if you're paying me to make the decision for you, I tell you what I would do. I would fire you. You want your company to grow? Your company will grow if you fire yourself. I can find anybody within 48 hours. I can find somebody to step in and run your business better than what you've been running it. And I can get you a replacement if you want to grow your company, because he had a nice company, but the company was vacillating like a lot of companies do, up and down, up and down. But 8 operations managers in a year, I said, your company is failing. But it's not because of those people sitting out there waiting to hear from me. It's because of you, because you're just a horrible manager. Horrible manager. You're a great restorer. The guy knows this game, one of the best in the industry. But he wanted me to go out and talk to all the employees. I said, no, I can't do that. He said, no, I tell you what, I paid you a lot of money to come down here 3 different times. I paid you to come down and consult with me. You're going to talk to my employees. I insist. I said, okay, have it your way. So we went outside the conference room, and he said, Ivan's going to tell you about what he thinks the state of the company is right now. And I said, I'm just going to be truthful with you. I said, like I told your boss, the company, what I would recommend is you start looking for new jobs, because this company is going to be out of business any day now. He does not know how to manage the company. He's a tyrannical leader. I feel for your pain. And I said, the only way to ever change is if he changes. Can you imagine me saying this, Rob?
Yeah.
As a consultant, I'm saying this. I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it. I told him I thought that would be enough, but he wanted me to somehow take his failure and turn it around and somehow translate it as though it was the employee's failure, and it wasn't. So I told them the truth. But there's a lot of companies out there like that.
Yeah,
it's sad.
It truly is. And you are one of the people that have never had a job and still no accountability. What I found is most people that have owned companies, run companies, have never had a responsibility to anyone else to show measures, to show profit, to show retention, to show morale, to show increased sales, to show a low loss run, to show all of the things that you're responsible for when you have to manage somebody else's company. And a lot of business owners just decided one day to open their door, and some of them got very, very lucky. Some of them worked hard, but still got into the right situation. But until you learn to be accountable to someone else, could be your wife, could be your husband, could be your employees. Until you learn to be accountable to other people, you can't be accountable to yourself. You sure as hell can't run a company. You have to have the ability to say, this is the problem. And what you did is you pointed out the pain point, the problem. And some people cannot be leaders. I mean, and they're not good managers, and they are very, and I got into this, and I had to explain this. We got into the whole, with a friend of mine, the whole presidential thing and how the last president was and blah, blah, blah. And I says, listen, it's not a friendship contest. It's not a leadership contest. If I had two people sitting in the room, I had Donald Trump and I had Barack Obama in the room. Which one do I want to hang out with? I think Barack Obama would be a lot more fun than Donald Trump. I don't even really like him per se. He's not really my kind of person. However, when it comes to running the country, the United States of America, I trusted his judgment because I felt he had a much better leadership ability. He had a business background. He understood it. I don't have to like him. I've worked for bosses and managers I didn't like, but I respected them. I understood their point. I understood where they were at. I didn't have to care for them. I wasn't going out for pizza and beer with them after work, but I respected that they were very, very good at what they did. I just didn't want to necessarily hang out with them because I didn't think they were necessarily that good at people, but they were good at what they did. There's no correlation between being good and being effective. It's nice if you're good. It's nice if you're a likable person, but I know likable people, they get trampled on by their employees. They're the opposite. They're not the tyrannical. They need to get a little bit tyrannical in their thinking because they're like, okay, no problem. I'll just like, no, you have to have some respect. You have to be respected. You don't have to be feared. Feared is stupid. Feared is moronic, but you have to be respected. You don't even have to be liked, but you have to be respected. Your employees you're not going to go out and have beer and pizza with them after work every day. Okay. Because that creates a problem, but they have to know that you at the core are going to do what's best for them. And that's why I went to the presidential thing. I like Donald Trump personally, and this isn't a political statement, so I won't get into that with anybody listening, just so that we don't go down that road. I respected his ability to lead much better than I liked him as a person. I didn't get wrapped up in the cult of personality. I didn't care about it because we elected him to lead, to be an effective leader, not a likable leader necessarily by the masses, but to be effective. And in business, you have to be an effective leader. You have to be demonstrable to your people, to your constituents, if you're political, or to your employees if you've got a business, when it comes to being seen and respected for what you're doing. You don't have to be liked. You have to be respected to be a leader. It's nice if they like you, but if they like you a little too much, hey, that's why Walmart changes their managers every couple of years, because people get comfortable and complacent.
Yeah, as far as leadership goes too, another thing is leaders don't communicate well with the people that are under them. How often do leaders ask their employees, am I giving you what I promised you I would give you? Do you think the training you're getting is sufficient? Do you think you need more training? There's no communication. Once again, it's always been mind-boggling. But again, I've had two restoration companies, so I've seen the good, bad, and ugly, and I've been the good, bad, and ugly for 30 years. But back when I started doing exit interviews was when my company really changed, because I started asking employees, why did you leave my company? And I started getting to hear the truth, and the truth wasn't always pretty. And I realized, okay, I'm doing something wrong, and it was helped me correct myself.
Well, Ivan, I appreciate it. I want to come back to this because we've taken the podcast way past the 30-minute mark.
Okay,
friend.
well,
but it's been a great conversation, and I want to come back to it. But Ivan, how can people find out a little bit more about you and your company and what you may be able to help them with? I know personally you've helped me, so I can vouch 100%. Ivan's worth every stinking penny when it comes to his advice. But how can our listeners find out a little bit more about you?
Well, thanks for the comments, Rob. My phone number is 573-291-0234 if someone wants to call or text me direct. And I do return calls. Sometimes it might take an hour, but I'll definitely give a call back if you have just questions or you just want to find out something maybe that you might want to try different that I can help you with. My website is showmemarketingsolutions.com, and my other website is disasterbrigadeusa.com. And of course, you can find me on Facebook under Ivanturner.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. And again, please reach out to Ivan. And he is a wealth of information. He's been there and he's done that, and he can definitely help you with that. Ivan, it's a pleasure, man. We got to do another one. I want to talk about the Show Me stuff a little bit more.
Okay, listen. And by the way, Rob, one more time, I just want to tell you, you got a beautiful studio.
Thank you. Yeah, he's like, is that solid brick? I'm like, yeah, solid vinyl brick. I appreciate that. All right, buddy.
All right, have a great
have a good
great
day,
weekend.
Man. Thank you, buddy.
I will see you. Bye-bye.